Hello, my name is Steve Sexton. Welcome to the Silver-Haired Tsunami Show. You know what? We have a wonderful show for you. We have 4 exciting guests, so stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You know what? There's a big issue happening these days. Marriages, 50% of them are ending in divorce. And if it's a second marriage and somebody's over the age of 50, it's almost 75% that's ending in divorce. Now, it causes major upheaval on men, women, children. We've got life coach, life transition coach, Paula Shaw here to help us run through the numbers and explain what's going on and what people can do. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Always a pleasure to be here.
Now, you know what? Why is divorce so difficult for women over 50?
Well, there are lots of aspects of that. Let's start with the vanity issue because, you know, we are girls. First of all, most of us don't look exactly like we did when we were 20, when we first got married. And we may not have the same wonderful hair we had. We may have some wrinkles. We may have gained a few pounds. So we don't feel as comfortable going out on the dating scene. So a lot of women really go into a depression around this because they just don't know how they're going to compete out there. And, you know, the fact that a lot of times men are dating younger women also makes women over 50 feel like, wow, how do I compete with that? Remember, too, a lot of those women, if they've been financially able, they haven't worked a full-time career in a while. Now, the financial needs may be such that they're going to have to find a way to earn a living, and they don't know what they're going to do. So that is a huge stressor.
So in other words, you have people that might be been involved with charities and work behind the scenes with charities for years as being a married wife, and now they're like, okay, what skills do I have that can actually get me some gainful employment that allow me to support myself?
Exactly.
So that's a big issue. And the other big issue is, you know what, hey, I'm not the same as I used to be, and now I'm competing, and that's a tough thing. Now, what's difficult for guys? You know what, if it was me, I mean, obviously, like I said before, I only have about 3 hairs I can comb left or right, but you know what about men? What are the difficulties there?
You're always youthful looking, Steve.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and let's remember, for both men and women, if you've been used to a couples situation or a more family-oriented lifestyle, now being alone isn't easy. So the loneliness can be a real issue. The other thing that often is an issue for men is they've probably had to divide their money in half and their assets in half. And sometimes, especially if they've been the sole earner, they feel a sense of really being kind of ripped off, even though they understand that's what's the right thing to do. Now the money has been halved that they feel they worked so hard for. And let's also remember that a lot of times as the romance in the marriage wanes or as time goes on, sex is not as prominent an issue as it was when they were younger. So they now may have different ideas about what being single should be for them and what they want to do with their single life. And it's not at all congruent with how they've lived their lives all these years as the husband and family man. So there's a lot of emotional conflict that can go on for them too, besides dealing with the fact that sometimes feelings of being kind of less than or not as powerful as I used to be when that money gets divided in half, as you well know, you work with that so much, that can be a major issue for men.
From a financial perspective, as a financial professional, the people that I see that are going through divorce, I find that, you know what, it's all about splitting the money. And that's where a lot of the fights come, even though they thought it was going to be amicable. But when you have somebody who's made all that money and they think they made it, should be theirs, and the other person says, hey, I need to live, and I've been part of this, and I've done all my part and raised the kids and all that stuff, part of this should be mine. So there I can see there's a big fight there, and I'm going to bet there's a big letdown on both sides, because the reality is both sides says, I need $10,000 a month to live.
Right.
And the reality is there's only $14,000 a month to split up.
Yes.
So they each get 7. So there's a big change there that's happening, and I can see how that could be difficult.
We're talking lifestyle change that they may never have really planned on at all.
Now, divorce is always hard on kids. But what about kids that are all grown up?
Yes. Well, that's a tough one too, because first of all, those kids may be losing the home they grew up in. That's full of all those family memories that they cherish. So that's a tough one. And now it's going to be so much more complicated during holiday times or family gathering times, right? Because do mom and dad want to be in the same room together? Or what if they take on new partners? And now we got to figure out how do we do that? You know, do we have them there at the same time? Do we go visit one? Do we go visit the other? It all becomes a lot more complicated.
Yeah, you know what? My nephew's wife, father and mother are divorced. So basically, they actually go to 5 Thanksgivings.
Oh,
Okay?
no.
So it's like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
They are just cattle prodding around all over the place. That's nuts. Now, what about, you know what, when it comes to things like inheritance, how kids feel when mom, gets remarried, or dad gets remarried and the kids don't like him, or they don't think they should have got divorced and dad says, I want out of this because mom's gone crazy, or vice versa.
Right. You know, that puts kids in a tough position because they're still the kids, right? That's still their mom and dad. But now they've got to be referees, or they've got to step in and be financial advisors, or express their feelings about the new spouse. And that, boy, bringing in new spouses is often a huge complication. I've done many sessions with people whose children are having a real hard time accepting the new spouse.
You know what, that brings us, we have about 30 seconds left. What are some of the good practices and tips for the newly divorced?
You know what, the first thing I would say is don't rush right out there and try to start dating somebody right away. You know, usually that's what you're used to, that's the norm. You want a partner again, but take the time to heal. Take the time to look at what went wrong, what changes do you need to make in yourself, what areas do you need to grow in before you go out there and look for someone else, because otherwise you may just recreate the same problems in the next relationship.
Paula, wonderful information. Thank you so very much, especially in the society where more and more people over 50 are going to be single.
Yes.
Now, if you would like to get more information on dating, divorce, you can always go to the Silver Hair Tsunami website. Hello and welcome back. This is Steve Sexton. You know what? I have this wonderful segment that you need to know about because it'll affect your kids. If you have some assets, it'll make a big difference. We have Brenda Geiger. She's the author of The Secrets of a Great Estate Plan and Estate Planning Secrets of the Affluent. Now, there's been some tax code changes that will dramatically affect the ability to transfer assets at a discount. And this is big. You know what? I'm just giving you a little bit because I want to leave the luster here for Brenda. Brenda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I'm going to do the technical part for you. It's IRS Code Section 2704. Now, you get to put it in layman's terms. What does that really mean and what's going on?
Well, this is part of the IRS code where since about 1990 when it was enacted, people could transfer part of their business or LLC that contained a family business or LLC interests that had real estate in them to their family, but they could get a discount on that value. So if they gave a gift of $1 million worth of real estate that was in an entity like a family limited partnership or an LLC, they could do so at a discount if there were certain restrictions on the entity regarding transfer.
So really what you're saying is somebody can give off $1 million, but it'd actually only be $700,000 they would be giving off when it comes to estate values when you're looking at somebody with an estate over $5 or $10 million.
Yeah, so somebody who's got a taxable estate over $5.45 million if they're single, $10.9 if they're married, because they can utilize both of their exemptions if it's all a community property estate. So this is where we call it compression in my land in estate planning terms. We call it compression of the estate because we're going to make the estate smaller in terms of what the IRS looks at in taxing it. But now that code section is going to be more than likely modified by year end. So it's a huge time for people to think about how can I still take advantage of the current law?
So my understanding also in looking into it is it also, once you do this, it kind of freezes the value of the estate in time, correct?
Yeah, so like there's a strategy called an intentionally defective grantor trust, where we can set up for the benefit of our children or really anybody, but most of the time it's going to be for children, and we can set that up with protective features so that, you know, a divorcing spouse, a creditor, or bankruptcy isn't going to be able to come in and take those assets from the children. But also by moving those assets by gift or by sale to that irrevocable trust, we can take that compression, but then you're right, it freezes it in time. So now any appreciation that happens outside of your estate. It happens over here in the trust, outside of the estate tax system. So
what the nice thing about that is if you did it now and say you're in your 50s, and that $700,000 or that $1 million building 20 years from now is worth $10 million, from an estate planning standpoint, it's still only $700,000.
Yeah.
That's significant. And it's changing to...
They're going to be getting rid of a lot of the lack of control and lack of marketability discounts, and they're also adding in a thing regarding a 3-year look-back rule, meaning if you die within 3 years of doing this kind of planning, that it could be that that discount gets recaptured into your estate. But the way that the regulations are drafted right now, the proposed regulations that will go to hearing on December 1st and potentially be active within 30 days of that date, basically what they're saying is not clear to us. We're not sure if that 3-year look-back rule is going to be retroactive from the date of the proposed regs, from December 1st, from when they're finally enacted, or if it's going to be prospective. My guess is it's probably going to be prospective, but we're just not clear on that yet.
So let me just kind of make a real simple reality check for our viewers. If you have a $20 million estate and you're able to discount it down to $14 million, okay, that means you're only paying estate taxes on about $3 million.
That's right.
That means if you have a whole bunch of real estate and $1.5 million worth of cash, you're probably going to be able to pay the estate taxes. But if that goes away, you're going to have to pay estate taxes on $9 million, and if you don't have that liquid, you're going to have to sell off assets or buy a big life insurance policy.
Yeah.
This could be a big change for everybody's estate. That means there's a lot of people who are going to have to rework this. Now, they won't have to rework this if it's already in place, because doesn't it get grandfathered in?
Well, that's what we're not 100% clear on regarding the 3-year look-back rule, meaning if somebody died, like let's say 2 years ago somebody did a transfer and then they died next year, is this look-back rule going to capture them into that? But again, my guess is probably not, but we're just not 100% clear. I think there'll be some more clarity by year end.
So it makes a lot of sense if you're in this type of situation where you have significant assets over $10 million to actually look at this. So further on down the line, when you decide to walk out on life, there's something there to make sure your whole estate, as is, goes off to the ones you love without paying the estate taxes.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, now is the time. If you've been waiting on the fence to do this kind of planning and you're familiar with it, or even if you're not familiar with it, get some information, and we're happy to help with that. We've got a book where I've got 2 chapters that kind of address this type of planning in the affluent book.
That's perfect. Now, we only have about a minute left, and I wanted to ask you, you know what, we just talked about divorce on the show, and it was the previous segment. What are the biggest things that, you know, how do you protect people from the devastating effects on inheritance from a divorce?
Well, the way you set up a continuing trust for a child by being able to swap out who the trustee of that subtrust, and then also not drafting in any demand rights for that child, can creditor protect it not only from divorcing spouses, but creditors, bankruptcy, lawsuits. So there's a special way that you can protect your children with the way you give it. So the staged and age distributions, at 25 they get 50%, at 30 they get the balance. That's not what we're talking about. So people who have those kinds of trusts set up, that's not really the creditor protection that could really protect the family.
I'm glad you've dispelled that myth, because I was just going to ask that next.
Yeah.
Brenda, thank you so much for shedding the light on this, what's going on here. If you would like to get more information, you want to go to Geiger Law or the Silver-Haired Tsunami website, because there's going to be a lot of changes. One of the big things that happens with the legal field is the changes in law from Congress and so on, and you want to make sure it doesn't adversely affect you. There's one big thing out there, and it goes back to way back when I was little it's root canals. You just kind of go, oh, you see that person with a patch on their face and they're, oh. We have Dr. John here from Pinnacle Endodontics to dispel all the misinformation. And if you're looking at a root canal, how can you utilize root canal therapy to save your teeth, which is probably a little more smarter. Now, Dr. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I want to ask, what is endodontics?
Endodontics is the branch of dentistry specializing in diagnosis and treatment of the diseased nerves and teeth when they become damaged, infected, or injured.
Well, I like that part because I like to have them treated as opposed to pulled out. So why does a root canal have such a bad reputation?
Well, that's a great question. Historically, we did the best we could with the technology we had, but the primary reason why a root canal procedure has such a notorious reputation is because the pain associated with the tooth, the diseased tooth. And when bacteria gets inside the tooth and starts attacking the nerve, that can become very uncomfortable.
That hurts. What are the common symptoms, signs that should be alerting me that I might be having this issue?
Biting discomfort is absolutely a common sign. Also, chewing, hot and cold triggering discomfort, especially anything that triggers a hot, throbbing toothache. Yes.
No, I don't want any of those. Now, the big thing is this, is getting a root canal covered by insurance? How much should I expect to pay? You know what, here's the other thing. If somebody has a low rate, should I go with them?
Great questions. Of course, we battle with that all the time. Regarding the insurance, the best thing to do is just to call our office, and my team will act as an advocate to research your insurance company, actually determine all those details for you. It's very important that all of the customers know that we're trying to do the best for them. So working with their dentist and their dental specialist, we'll actually figure out what is the best treatment plan for that patient, for that situation.
Yeah, wonderful. But here's the other thing. We see implants, other things being offered at a discount. Is it, you know what, I'm not a fan of going for a discount when it comes to my health. So, you know what are your thoughts on, you know what, when you see the lowest cost provider providing a root canal or root canal therapies?
You have to be really careful with that. And regarding the technology, what they have available, historically, root canal therapy and treatment has had a good prognosis, but unfortunately the retreatment rate was high because we weren't able to see all the canals or the entirety of the problem. But with newer technology that's now available, the probability of retreatment is much less likely.
Oh, good. My dentist says, hey, he does root canal therapies. Why shouldn't I be letting him do the root canal? What separates general dentistry from endodontics?
Well, in dental school, we're all taught how to do root canal procedures. In dental school, it's basic education. As endodontists, so I'm a root canal specialist, and we actually employ special instruments and technology to make the diagnostic process and treatment more effective. With the technology that is moving on and becoming more and more advanced, we want to make sure we have that technology available at our fingertips. It's not always as easy as one thinks.
So here's a question. If I'm having the hot and cold, the pain, should I be going to my general dentist, or would it be better off going to an endodontics to see if I have an issue?
Great question. Well, of course, your friendly family dentist is who we go to routinely for 6-month checkups. If you know you have a toothache and a throbbing pain, you're always welcome to call our office and get an evaluation, because I do work well with our fellow colleagues, dentists and other specialists. At least, if you don't need treatment, we can get you in the right direction and get you back to your friendly family dentist and do whatever's needed for you.
So, in other words, you don't need a referral to go to you?
Correct, you do not.
Okay. Now, here's the big thing. If I leave things untreated, or somebody leaves it, if our viewers leave it untreated,
Yes.
you know what is the effect of leaving things untreated? Are they getting an implant?
Delay can lead to undesirable things. For example, once the bacteria has reached inside the tooth and moving down toward the bone, the actual abscess or pus pocket can be a major issue, to where if it's an upper tooth, it can be infected sinuses. If it's a lower tooth, it can actually spread and constrict our airways. Of course, no one wants an undesirable hospital visit due to a pus pocket that's out of control. So we need to take this taken care of as soon as possible. So delay is not encouraged.
So, you know what, and you know what, so I have some people that says, you know what, if I'm having issues, I'll just have the tooth taken out and have an implant put in. What's the benefit of actually keeping our natural teeth?
Our body wants its own tooth. It embryologically grew the tooth, and it's a part of us. The body just doesn't want the bacteria inside of that, so it actually escapes away from the bacteria. So we want our own tooth, and the body will more likely accept itself healing process of a natural tooth. So again, we want to work hard in battle to keep that natural tooth.
Now, one other question, you know what, I've always heard plaque from teeth, the infections from teeth and all that could have or are a sign of other issues in the body, such as heart disease and things like that. Is that correct?
It's interesting. The literature is inclusive, exclusive criteria on that. We got to really be careful with the literature in terms of statistically analyzing that and the analysis of the details. But basically, when one is not well, it affects other parts of the body. So if the teeth are not well, the rest of the body may not be well, as, of course, because of that infection or that chronic infection.
Now, you run Pinnacle Endodontics,
Yes.
and you've got this special offer for our viewers, and I was wondering if you could just tell us all about it.
Yeah, thank you. So if you mention Tsunami,
The silver-haired tsunami. Yeah.
Silver-haired Tsunami, when you call the office, we'll actually add a $100 credit toward the first visit because we want to help people. And of course, thank you for having us on the show.
Well, you know what, Dr. John, thank you for being here and explaining all this, because I didn't know, and I know a few people that I should be referring to you because they have those teeth issues every time they drink coffee.
Yes, quite a few actually out there, yes. They just
Thanks.
don't know where to go.
Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to get more information, you can go to Pinnacle Endodontics or go to the Silver-Haired Tsunami website. Remember, they're giving $100 off, and all you got to do is mention the Silver-Haired Tsunami. Change is a tough thing to go through, and you know what? Sometimes people create roadblocks for themselves with change, and they just can't move forward in their life, and it stops them in the place that they're in, and they can't move forward, and they can't fulfill their life the way they'd like. So we have Ken Foster. Ken Foster is an international best-selling author. He's a life coach. You know what? He's worked with some of the who's who of business, and we're lucky to have him here. But Ken's also the CEO of Stars of Courage that helps other people make changes in their lives for the better so they don't have to rely on others, which is wonderful. So Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. Great to be here again.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Now, I really want to get into this, the issue that people have or roadblocks they create when they need to make changes in their lives, and they hold back, even for people who've been in their house for 20 or 30 or 40 years, and they're going, okay, it's time for us to downsize, but they can never do it.
Well, the first thing that I realized years ago when I started in this life coaching business is that pain is a great motivator of individuals. So if they're feeling discomfort, they're tolerating things they don't want to be tolerating, they're putting up with stuff of other people's stuff or things in their own life that they're just going, this isn't working for me. Maybe I've been living in a home for the last 20 years, like you said, and all of a sudden the neighborhood has changed, and maybe the children are out of the house, and maybe they're in a place where now they were married, now they're single, and this thing isn't right for them. But there's a factor in change that comes up for almost everybody, and that's fear. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of not realizing what could be out there for you unless you take that next step. So change is something we're always going through. Everybody goes through it. But I don't think a lot of times we stop and really go within ourselves and start to understand, what is this change? How is it going to benefit me? Am I being pushed in the right direction? Is there something, that's holding me back? And if it is, can you face it? Because it takes courage. It takes courage to face our fears, face the unknown. And sometimes there's blocks to that. So that's what I do. I help people move through change.
Now, when you're talking about change, helping people move through change, how do they go about facing that fear? I mean, realizing that it's there, understanding what's going to be on the other side, or creating a plan from A to Z on this transition, and really understanding what it's going to mean to them when they get down the road and they're all completed, like somebody moving out of their primary residence after 50 years.
Right. Well, I don't ever start with fears or what's not working or what I start with is I ask them to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is dismal, 10 is outstanding. We go through a 20-point process, and we do this in our nonprofit organization for individuals that have fallen below the poverty line also. So we look at 20 different points, areas of their life that they may be able to improve, right? Scale of 1 to 10. For instance, your family life, how's that doing? Your relationship life, your finances, your health, your fitness. We go through those areas. That's where we start from. And then after that, we ask them in those areas, let's say you're a 5 in that area in your relationship at home, we ask them to look at that and ask them, what are you tolerating? And from there, they set up goals. And from there, they, as a life coach, what I do is I help them track their progress and track their results. And of course, that's what we do in the Stars of Courage.
Well, let's talk about Stars of Courage. Now, Stars of Courage is designed to help people below the poverty line learn how to fend for themselves, earn a living for themselves.
That's exactly what we're doing. So in San Diego today, we have 417,000 people that are living below the federal guidelines for poverty. Now, that's not just low income, because you double it when you put low income individuals here. So those individuals are people that, for the most part, a lot of times the programs out there that are meant to help them are kind of disempowering them. For instance, when you give a person food and shelter and money, that's great temporarily, but if you don't balance that out with education, with a life coach, with somebody that can help them build up their esteem, their understanding of where they've gone off track, we just end up disempowering individuals. They just keep getting the money, you know? So that's what Stars of Courage is about. What we do is we help individuals that are underneath the federal guidelines by, and up to 200% of the federal guidelines. So a single person in San Diego, if you're making about $23,500, you can come into this program and you can get a life coach for up to 3 years that will help you to overcome the challenges you might be facing that are keeping you financially subdued.
You know what, this is the thing I like about Stars of Courage, and this is also the reason why I donated, because when you have somebody who has learned how to live their life and not rely on others but themselves, or, you know, hey, I need a helping hand at the end of my arm because I now know how to do that, because I've had somebody that helped me, I can go fish on my own, so to speak. And I can go make a life for myself without worrying about what's going to happen behind me. Absolutely. And now, you know, once that happens, they can bring up others. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful message that's coming out of the Stars of Courage. And Ken, thank you so much for leading this effort. And again, thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, I really appreciate you being there. And I just want to mention that if people would like to become an advocate, or they'd like to volunteer for Stars of Courage, or know somebody that needs that program, they can go to our website, starsofcourage.org, and find out a lot more about this.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Steve.
Now, if you would like to get more information about the Stars of Courage, you can go to the Silver-Haired Tsunami website or the Stars of Courage website. And by all means, if you're in need and help and you fit along those socioeconomic lines that Ken talked about, by all means, go to that website, get yourself some help. Wasn't that a wonderful show? 4 wonderful guests. If you'd like to see more or other episodes, go to the Silver-Haired Tsunami website. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.